There we go. All right, starting with Maro email accounts. All committee members should have access to 365, Microsoft 365. That includes Microsoft Office, which has emails. Each committee member should have received an email log or an email account that's specific to them. So that should kind of be like name@ukmaro.org. If you haven't received that, just get in touch with us. Just like drop the maro@anthonynolan.org email a message and we can get that sorted for you. But if you filled out your committee contacts, then you should have one of those. That email also gives you access to your group's Maro account. So usually in previous years, you would have been able to log into that with a separate login. That's not the case anymore. So everybody on your committee who has their own email is now linked to that shared inbox. So when you're in your own personalized email account, you can just click the top right corner in your profile on the Outlook web app and click a little icon that says open another mailbox. And when you've done that, you can type in your Maro group's email and it should open that up without needing a password. So everybody should have shared access to that now, and you should still check that. If for whatever reason you don't have access to any of that, again, just get in touch and we'll try and sort it out for you as soon as possible. The other thing that's linked to 365 is OneDrive, which is our cloud storage for Maro groups, and also the Maro UK Sharepoint. On Sharepoint, if you've never been on it, do just have a look through it in the browser of what's on it, because there's lots and lots of helpful materials and resources. So you might need to request access to this if your new email address has never been on it. Again, you can just do that. We'll try and sort it out. If it happens consistently, get in touch with us, but you should be able to have access to it. And there's lots and lots of important resources on there. So this is what our SharePoint looks like. I'm just going to kind of talk through the different folders here very briefly. If you've never seen it before, this might be a lot, but again, there's so much helpful stuff on here that's just really good to be aware of what's there. So there's the how-to guides, which are lots of guides on how to access your emails, guides on how to run donor recruitment events, how to do different forms. So these guides can be really important. I think there's recently been some new ones added as well by Zoe. That's really exciting. Just have a click through it. Ready to roll guides can be really helpful if you are recruiting for new committee roles, or if you've got new committee members joining halfway through the year because you're doing an EGM maybe, or recruiting again during freshers. And they will just have info on the different committee roles that we encourage people to have on committee, and what their responsibilities might be like, and what helpful resources we've got available for them. Donor recruitment will have lots of resources on how to run donor recruitment events, but also the black folder paperwork, the event tracker, all these kind of things. So that's a really helpful one if you are, for example, the donor recruitment coordinator, or if you're even volunteer coordinator and want to train people on how to run events. Campaign, so if you click into that folder, you will have an overview of all our different campaigns. Each campaign has a different folder within that, and you have all our social media resources in there. You can find email templates that are campaign specific if you are maybe emailing businesses or other groups about collaborating with you for campaigns. There's lots of info on there. So if you're looking at doing a themed fundraising event maybe, or if you're looking at doing a themed donor recruitment event, collaboration, anything like that, that's a really good place to go. The volunteers folder is going to have volunteer logs. It's going to have reward and recognition resources. It's going to have our volunteer guides, all these kind of helpful resources that are good to give to volunteers to look at if you're looking at volunteer management. And then there's the fundraising folder, which has income expenditure forms. It has fundraising guides that Zoe has uploaded, so how-to guides on specific fundraising events. It has all kinds of useful things. There's so much in there. I feel like Lindsay is probably better to explain that, but we will go through the different things in there as well later on as well. So hopefully she will be able to give you a better overview than me of that one. Press and publicity is a folder that is really good if you're looking at branching out maybe. So it's got press release templates. It's got templates if you're wanting to look at writing different newspapers, so that's a really good one if you're looking at local news. Patient appeal resources, pretty self-explanatory. It's got all the kind of release templates and press release templates that we've got for our ongoing patient appeals. So if you're looking at using more patient appeals in your recruitment this year, that's a really good place to start. Committee management and planning, that again has lots of trackers and different committee role resources, different planning your year resources, all these kind of things if you're looking at planning your year. National conference, regional conference, and President's Day resources is going to be really exciting for you at the moment, because if you're missing any of these workshops or just don't have time for them but really want to watch them back, you can go back and look at all the different PowerPoints and recordings that have been uploaded from this conference. So if you click into the National Conference 2021 folder from this year, you will be able to find a list with where to find all the different, with links to where to find all the different presentations, as well as YouTube links to access them. And you can also find all our resources that we will present on Saturday at the in-person conference. They're not up there yet, but they will be there after the conference. So if you missed the in-person conference, you can go back to that as well. Finance and insurance, that is, I honestly have never been in that folder, to be completely honest with you. But again, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If you ever need to have a look at our financial or insurance documents, that's where to go. And then finally, there's the online training webinars, which have been happening over the past year. And again, you can find all the YouTube links and presentation PowerPoints in there for different roles, for different campaign specific trainings. And they're a really, really good point to point volunteers and new committee members to if they ever need some inspiration or if they need some extra training potentially. I already spoke about the donor recruitment folder, but this is one of the key documents that you can find in that folder. This is really, really important for you to keep throughout the year, or at least for one person on committee to keep throughout the year. The donor recruitment and event tracker can be found on Sharepoint. It's a really great resource to just monitor volunteering hours, your donor recruitment, your fundraising, all these kind of things in one place. And it's going to be really helpful when you go through your year at the end of the year and have to send this back, and then you don't have to remember it all at the end of the year, but you have it all in one place, kept throughout the year accurately. I think I have a link that can be sent into the chat, so you can just access it from here. But again, it is in the donor recruitment folder. There are multiple sheets on this. So this is just the donor recruitment one you can see here, where you obviously fill in your event date, the time of your event, where you held it, whether it was linked to a campaign, how many people you signed up, who took the lead of the event, how many volunteers or who turned up, and any comments or issues. The other reason this is really important to keep is because in future years, you can hand these over, these trackers, to the new committee, and they can look back at it and see what events maybe worked really well and what events haven't worked well, what they should try, what they shouldn't try. So this is just good to keep for future reference as well. And then, like I said, you can track volunteers on here, you can track fundraising. There are multiple sheets to this planner, so it's really useful. Affiliation agreements is a big thing that I'm trying to chase people on right now. So every group should have had the affiliation agreement through to their shared inbox, and we would have asked all our presidents to digitally sign a copy and return that to the Maro inbox. If you haven't done that yet, please do. I will send out a follow-up email today. So it'd be really great if you could try and remind your president to return that if they haven't yet. The affiliation agreement is a legally binding document that recognizes your Maro group is part of Anthony Nolan, protects you as much as it protects us. So it is really key that we get that returned from you, preferably before the conference. So yeah, do give the president a nudge if you're not sure. It has gone through to the shared inbox, but we keep the filled out version. So if you ever want to have a look at our affiliation agreement and you're not the president, just give us, drop us an email and we can show you the affiliation agreement as well if you'd like to have a look at it. Now, one thing that tends to get confused a little is that expenses and income and expenditure are two different things. So I'm going to talk about expenses, and then Lindsay's going to take over from me on all things fundraising and income expenditure. But the expenses form only applies to volunteer and donor recruitment expenses. So you cannot expense any fundraising expenses on there. So for any fundraising costs, you have to use a fundraising grants, but things that we can reimburse you for using the expenses form are travel. So for example, if you're traveling to the national conference this year, you can send us your travel expenses after. If you need to buy any refreshments or snacks for training nights or volunteer events, or for socials, if you want to print business cards, if you do any printing for your donor recruitment events, these things you can all reimburse with us. That being said, do check with us or with your Maro steward before you spend any of this money, because sometimes there's going to be an expense where we just have to say, sorry, that's not approved, we can't expense that. And the last thing we want for you is to spend that money and then be told we can't reimburse it. We don't want you to spend anything out of your own pocket. So we'd rather just say no in advance and have you not even expense it in the first place than for you to have to pay that and then realize you're not going to get your money back. The form is a little complex, but there are notes on how to fill it out in this. So you can see here, there's always an example on how to fill it out. I will talk you through it real briefly, just so that you've heard about it once. But if you ever have any questions about how to fill this out, do just get in touch and we can help you to the best of our abilities. So you have to make sure that you fill out the entire form. So we get a lot of forms with missing fields that we then have to chase up. That's not ideal because we are on a certain time limit when we do send these off. So do try and fill out the whole form if you can. You must always provide a receipt for all expenditure that you claim, except mileage. So if you drive to an event that you wouldn't have a receipt for, obviously, there's a mileage calculator on here. And if you can't provide a receipt, then you have to get in contact with your Maro steward before submitting your claim, just to make them aware of it. And you also have a comment section here to explain why you have got no receipt and to state that you've definitely done everything and exhausted all your possibilities and still haven't gotten that receipt. The more information you provide on your expense claim, the less time we have to spend checking your claim and the quicker you'll receive your money back. So it is really key that you do fill it out to the best of your abilities. Do remember to fill out the drop down for project codes. So that is somewhere here. I think it's covered under my, yeah, okay, it was covered under my videos. Yeah, so there is a drop down here that you can select. There are different options. So the project codes are Maro Regional AGM, which means these are any Maro expenses linked to the regional national conferences. There is Maro AGM, which are any expenses linked to the national conference. So if you're using these forms at the moment to reimburse your claims for travel, then you would select the Maro AGM project code. There is Maro, which is just any other Maro expenses. And then there's event recruitment, which are any expenses linked to a non-Maro recruitment event. So even if you are expensing something for your own donor recruitment, but it's Maro related, then still select the Maro code. And like I said, if you're ever unsure, just ask. We're happy to help. We're happy to help you fill it out, because we do want you to get your money back. We do want you to get reimbursed. So yeah, just let us know. And then please make sure you put in your details as well, like your bank details here at the bottom. There's lots of people that submitted and don't put in their bank details, so we don't know where to send the money. But yeah, it's easily missed because it's in the bottom corner. But yeah, that's really important. And on that note, I think I am, no, not yet. Expense top tips. I feel like these are fairly self-explanatory again, but do not reuse someone else's form. Always start a claim form fresh. So just download it from Excel, from SharePoint to Excel, and fill it out from blank, because otherwise you might accidentally keep someone else's details in there without realizing. And that can cause all kinds of confusion. Double and triple check that you have fully completed the form. I've said this like 3 times now. I don't need to say it again. And the more informative your comment section is, the less likely there will be a delay on your money, because otherwise it can take a couple of weeks to come back. Leave enough time to receive your claim, because it can take up to 2 to 3 weeks to process your claim and you don't want to be out of pocket. Very importantly, make your claim within 1 month of the expenditure, because otherwise it might get rejected. So you have 1 month since you spent that money, send it off as soon as possible, and provide receipts. And as I've already said, agree claims with your Mara steward first, just to make sure that you'll definitely get your money back. You don't have to do that on travel expenses unless your travel expenses are ridiculously high for an unexplained reason. Do check that with us before you spend it. But other than that, yeah, do check. And now I'm handing over to Lindsay.
Thank you. So now I'm going to chat through all of the fundraising admin that you'll need to be aware of throughout the year, starting with the income and expenditure form. So you'll need to fill in the income and expenditure form after each fundraising activity throughout the year. It's a responsibility of the treasurer or fundraising coordinator on your committee to fill this out, and they need to send it into the community fundraising team at the end of the academic year. So we need to have this in by June 2022. It seems so far away, but it'll be here before you know it. If we need to give you, we need you to give us a clear breakdown of where the funds you raised are from, and you need to include any fundraising expenditure you might have incurred over the year. So for example, a fundraising grant or a student union grant. Please do make sure you send any funds raised into us as soon as possible, within 4 weeks of your event happening, if at all possible. And that would be the ideal scenario. You should have all received a link to your Mara Group's new Just Giving campaign page for this year, which is the best way for you to send in your fundraising. You can add the Just Giving page link to the income and expenditure form, as the money from the Just Giving page is sent directly to us, Auntie Nolan, so you don't need to worry about that. We'll always tell you when we receive funds from you, so it's a good idea to keep a track of this on your form and note the dates that you send them in, and if we receive them or not. It's much easier to do it per event, because then it just saves you doing a lot of catch up later on in the year. So it's important to remember that by the end of June 2022, you should have sent all the funds in that you've raised, all receipts, and the income and expenditure form. If you do not send in your form by this date, then unfortunately we're not able to process any grant applications from your group for the following year. So now I'm going to talk about fundraising grants. You can apply for a fundraising grant to help with any fundraising event throughout the year. So for example, to pay for venue hire for a big event, you can apply for a grant for up to £300 for the whole year. However, you don't have to apply for the full amount. If you think your group needs a grant, you will have to fill in a grant application form 6 weeks before your event. You'll also need to confirm that you'll be able to raise 4 times that amount of the grant that you're applying for. And you can't apply for a grant if we haven't received your income and expenditure form from last year. So hopefully all your groups ones are in just now. Before you fill in an application, please ask yourself, do you need the funds you're asking for? It's always best to try and get as many freebies as possible when it comes to fundraising. So this means that more funds can go towards our life-saving work. Find out if you could hire, for example, your SU as a venue for free, or approach local businesses for raffle prizes, or have a committee bake-off to get ready for a bake sale. You'll find some of these forms and letters within the fundraising folder that we were talking about at the beginning of the presentation. A top tip is to check in with your student union to find out if they provide grants to student societies and what you need to do to apply for one. So some top tips for when you apply for a fundraising grant is send in your grant application at least, as I said, 6 weeks before your event, so that our finance team have time to process it, and check with your group if you feel confident that you can raise at least 4 times the amount that you're going to request for a grant for. Make sure that you've detailed exactly what you need the funds for. You need to know the cost of what you need and how much you plan to raise from what you're buying. And finally, some fundraising rules to remember. When you fundraise for Maro, you fundraise under Auntie Nolan's name. So this means that legally all money raised for Auntie Nolan must be sent to us. You must send the money in within 4 weeks of each fundraising activity. So as I say, it's really important we get that in as soon as you've completed your task or activity. Remember, it costs £40 to add each new potential donor to the register, so every penny counts. The sooner you send in your life-saving funds, the sooner they can be put to good work. If paying in funds through your SU, always ask for a receipt. Sometimes money goes missing or gets mixed up with the SU, so make sure you have a receipt to show the money was paid in should you need to give it to us. Also, please let us know when you've paid in money to your SU and if there are any problems that we can help you with, and we can chat to them on your behalf. You can only spend the Mara fundraising grant on agreed activities, and you only have to fill in detail of sending in, you will have to add all spending in your income and expenditure form as well. Keep receipts for all expenditure and send these in with your income expenditure form at the end of year, as I say, no later than June 2022. And send all artwork to us as well before it goes to print so that we can approve it. So for example, if you're creating any recipe cookbooks or naked calendars. And that's my part of it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's me again. This is going to be a little boring, I will warn you. This is GDPR. And I'm sure you've all had talks like this before, but it is important that we definitely talk to you about this. So just bear with us while I basically read off the screen. So we are not bound by the EU GDPR rules anymore. So this part of the presentation has changed slightly in the past few years. So our UK GDPR rules you will have to adhere to as a Maro group, because you'll be handling lots and lots of volunteer data, application forms, sensitive data, all that kind of stuff. And Anthony Nolan have a legal obligation to ensure that Maro adhere to UK GDPR rules. So when collecting volunteer data, the best policy is to think about how you would like someone else to treat your own data. So when you collect data, tell people exactly what you're going to be using it for and why. Store it securely, only use it for the purpose you told them you would. Use the data securely, and if someone asks you to stop contacting them, you have to stop contacting them. And make sure that you pass that information on to the privacy office, which is dataprotection@anthonynolan.org, and make sure that quite obviously you do not give any data to anyone else. When you collect data, tell people exactly what you are going to be using it for and why. So be transparent about how you intend to use the data and give people appropriate privacy notices when collecting their personal data. So for example, when you collect someone's email address at a freshers fair, you can have a note on the screen before they put down their email to say how you use their information. For example, you say Maro are collecting this data on behalf of Anthony Nolan, registered charity number 803716. We will only use your information to contact you about Maro and Anthony Nolan activities. And if you no longer wish to receive updates, please tell us and we will update our records. Storing data securely. So as the person who collects data, you are legally responsible for how it is stored. We would like you to store all your volunteer data on Office 365, as it is the most secure place to store it. You can also follow these tips for computer security. So you can install a firewall and virus checking on your computer. You can make sure that your operating system is set up to receive automatic updates. You can protect your computer by downloading the latest patches or security updates, which should cover any vulnerabilities. You should only allow your volunteers to access the information they need to do their role and don't let them share passwords. You could consider installing an anti-spyware tool, and again, only store data on 365, and please do not store it on your personal files or personal laptops. That's really important. Only using data for the purpose you told volunteers you would. So you should only use volunteer data for Maro communications, as this is what you told them you would use it for. And if you do change purposes, ask them first. If you maybe want to add them to a different mailing list or to a different volunteer group somewhere, do let them know and get them to agree to that before you do it. Changing the purpose of processing requires you to contact the privacy office to determine if the new purpose is still compatible. So again, you can message this email here at the bottom. Only one person on your committee should be put in charge of data, and that should be password protected on 365. When you are contacting your mailing lists, you can follow these tips for email security. So when you start to type in the name of your recipient, some email software will suggest similar addresses that you have used before. So make sure that you choose the right address before you click send. Always use blind carbon copy, so BCC, in your recipients for emails to send emails, and ensure that you don't reveal email addresses to other recipients, and do not just use the CC label. So for example, if you're sending out a mail that's supposed to go to all your volunteers, do not just write every single email into the CC bit, because then everybody can see who those emails went to. While if you put all the different emails into the BCC address line, nobody except the person who's receiving the email can only see that it went to themselves and not who else that email went to. And also be careful when using group email addresses. Check who is in the group and make sure that you really want to send the message to everybody and not just a few people from that group for convenience's sake. I know it saves time, but it is really important that you check first. And if people ask to be removed from your volunteer database, you need to make your records reflect this. Don't remove them completely, as there is a risk that you may need to contact them again to get back on your list without their contact preferences. But you do need to make sure that those that there is somewhere in your contact details, in your records of that person, that it says do not contact them with X and Y anymore because they've requested that. If someone at an event asks to be removed from the register, tell them to contact the donor support team. You yourself won't be able to remove them from the register, but this is the email that they can use to get taken off the register. And again, quite obviously, do not give anyone else volunteer data. If anyone outside of your Maro committee requests your volunteer data, please contact the Maro team immediately and do not give them that data. GDPR rules at recruitment events. So data management has been minimized due to digital data capture, which all of you will still be trained on. So that is a virtual sign-up process now, a digital sign-up process, with all the paper forms being removed. But you will still deal with sensitive data at donor recruitment events, even if any application forms will now be digital. So all details on the form must be kept completely confidential. You and your volunteers should never counsel anyone you don't know personally. It is important for the donor to be honest about any medical problems they may have had in the past. So it is more likely that they will be releasing this confidential information to you if they try that one again. This is more likely if the confidentiality is stressed to them. That was a difficult sentence. And only discuss medical queries with other Maro members with the consent of the potential donor. Don't just walk around or shout across the recruitment event, hey, they say that they've got this condition, can they still sign up? Please don't do that. Oh, and that's the GDPR bit done. So I think these are our last little bits. The last thing I'm going to talk to you about is key contacts in the Maro team and within Maro that you can contact if you have any other questions, or if you ever have any questions about admin. So you will have one national Maro rep, which our current national Maro can be seen here. There will be a new national Maro elected at the end of this week at the conference. So I'm not going to go into too much depth about these girls, but yeah, next year you'll have a new Maro rep allocated to you, and you can come to them with any questions about campaigns, peer-to-peer support, and they can also pass any queries on to us if there's ever anything that they can't answer. You also have your allocated Maro team rep, so that will likely be Charlotte Hughes, Holly, or me. If you ever have any admin questions, just drop us an email. You can message us directly via emails. You can get in touch with us via Facebook or via the Maro inbox. So that's maro@anthonynolan.org. We also have our own Instagram, Maro team, if you do want to go via that channel. And then you also have a fundraising team contact. So that might be Gemma, Chiara, or Lindsay, who's also on this call. So if you ever have any fundraising questions, just get in touch with one of them. You should have a fundraising rep allocated as well. If you're ever not sure about who your reps are, just get in touch with us. You can also find a who's who and a stewardship allocation on 365. So you can go there as well if you're unsure of who your contact is. That being said, you can always get in touch with any of us. We're always going to be happy to help, but your rep should be your first point of contact. And if you ever have any fulfillment questions, this is not necessarily admin related, but if that's ever anything donor recruitment related, you can still email fulfillment@anthonynolan.org, even though our process has changed slightly, but they will still be able to help as well. And then we've got a fun Maro quiz that I spoke about earlier. So just to make sure that you guys were listening and had a good time learning about all these fun admin bits and bobs, we're going to have a few true or false questions. So if you could participate, that would be great. Just you can do like reactions, can't you? If you want to react, what are the different reactions? What can you do? If you want to do like a thumbs up or thumbs down, so like, oh God, thumbs up for true, thumbs down for false, you can either do that via video or just use the reactions on the emoji reactions. It's up to you what you want to do. So, true or false? If you don't have a fundraising coordinator or treasurer, your group does not need to fill in the income expenditure form.
We should do like a countdown clock sound.
Oh God.
Boo.
Lindsay can be a countdown clock. That is, of course, false. The income expenditure form must be filled in and sent to community@anthonynolan.org by the 30th of June, 2022. It's a record of all the funds you've raised and anything you've spent in the year, and it's important for our finance team to have it regardless of whether or not you have a fundraising coordinator or treasurer. If you don't have an allocated role for that, the president could do it, or you could just redistribute that responsibility or get in touch with us if you need any help filling it out, but you still need to submit it. So, true or false? If your USU account should be at £0 before handover, and all the funds you've raised this year should be paid in by the 30th of June 2022. That is, of course, true. All funds should be paid in and any accounts should be cleared by the 30th of June. You can pay your fundraising in via bank transfer with the help of USU, or you could use your Just Giving pages. Either way, please make sure we've received all the funds and there is no money handed over to the new committee. True or false? Your group won't be able to get a fundraising grant next year if you haven't returned your income expenditure form this year. Correct. Sadly, we won't be able to give your group a fundraising grant next year if you don't send yours in by the 30th of June. So please think of others, think of the future Maro groups that don't want to suffer because of bad admin etiquette. True or false? You can apply for fundraising grant after you have spent money on items towards your fundraising event. So if you've already spent the money, can you still apply for fundraising grant? There's lots of O faces, so I just don't know what that means. Well, it's false either way. You need to apply for fundraising grant 6 to 8 weeks before you need your funds. So make sure that you're able to raise 4 times the amount you are requesting, and you can apply for fundraising grant of up to £300 for the full year. So yeah, you need to apply for the grant before you spend anything. So scenario, Mara sends out an email to all volunteers about an upcoming recruitment event, and someone replies to say that they don't want to volunteer anymore and invokes their right to be forgotten. If this happens, both Mara and Anthony Nolan have to erase all data held on that person and immediately stop processing their data. Is that true or is that false? That is true. So they are revoking their consent for us to keep their personal information. Therefore, we are legally obliged to erase all their personal data. This includes people's names and addresses and contact info like emails or phone numbers. If a volunteer asks us to remove their data, you must let the Mara team know so that they can remove all the data that we hold on the individual. So this is this is different for to someone asking you to just stop emailing them. If they ask to be removed, you have to remove them. If they just ask to be changing their contact preferences, you don't need to remove all the personal data. Just say that's false. No, okay. At a recruitment event, someone approaches you privately to discuss a medical condition that they have, and another Mara is using the medical guidelines. As you can't use the medical guidelines, you are allowed to contact anyone you know who may know the answer to check if they can join the register. Is that true or is that false? That is false. I really, really hope everybody knows that that is false. You are in charge of quite a lot of sensitive data, so that can be race, ethnic origin, health, contact information when running a recruitment event. So just be conscious that people will be giving away sensitive data when they join the register, and that you have to keep that private. Keep all data that you handle out of recruitment drive private, secure, and confidential. You should not counsel anyone you know personally, and only discuss medical queries with other Maro members at the event if you have had the explicit consent of the potential donor. And I think that is the end of our quiz, fun quiz. Are there any questions? I'm going to stop sharing my screen here. And I'm also going to stop the recording in case you don't want your questions to be recorded. So that's going to happen now.